Have you noticed the recent decrease in the quality of your clothes? Your shirts feel more plastic than cotton, or pants rip easier than usual? You're not crazy. There's a reason for this, and it's the rise of fast fashion across the globe. Fast fashion is a term started in the late 90s to describe the factories that pump out cheaply made clothes at a rapidly fast rate for cheaper expenses. These textile factories have horrible conditions for their employees, with terrible wages and no benefits for working there. Most of the employees at these factories are young women, so the wage gap and workplace discrimination are really prevalent at these places. One example of how bad these places can be for these young women is a collapse at a textile factory in Bangladesh in 2013 that killed 1,134 workers. This is similar to a problem that happened back in the 1920s at a factory called the Triangle Factory, where a fire broke out, killing many women in the process, which is actually why we have workplace safety implemented today. So it's horrible to think about these things still happening 100 years later. Not only are the workplaces themselves horrible, but the clothes that they make are just as bad. Fast fashion uses cheap materials that cuts corners to make cheaply made garments made from synthetic fibers that are basically plastic. This is not good for your skin and has a hard time holding in sweat and can sometimes even give you rashes. These fibers are non-biodegradable also, and because of how cheaply they are made, they end up in landfills 10 times faster. Most clothes nowadays end up in oceans and rivers, filling our water with microplastics. You know, the thing that if you breathe in or digest can poke holes in your lungs and your stomach? Yeah, that is in our water because of these cheaply made non-biodegradable clothes. They're also not easy to break down, so they stay in there forever. In fact, 85% of clothing goes into landfills each year. Because these clothes are so cheaply made, they fall apart so much faster, which makes people get rid of them much faster because they don't last as long. And 10% of carbon emissions are caused by fast fashion factories. These fast fashion companies are also tricking you into buying from them because they are cheap. Well-made clothes are usually more expensive because of the labor expenses to make well-made clothes. And the materials are expensive too, like cotton or silk. This is why so many fast fashion companies like Shein are a lot less expensive, because they're cutting so many corners to make these cheaply made clothes that they can pump out 10 times faster than a well-made garment. You might be asking yourself, why is this happening? Well, it's because of the downgrade in people making clothes. Nowadays, you don't really hear about people sewing or fabric stores anymore ever since Joann's shut down, so people often have to buy their clothes. And after the pandemic specifically, there was a large increase in fast fashion factories across the globe. Because people were getting laid off during this time and people weren't working as much, people couldn't afford to buy well-made garments that cost a lot. So, of course, they're going to run to the fast fashion, only $10 t-shirts. And also with the rise of Amazon after the pandemic, people, started shopping online and stopped going to mom and pop fabric stores or even in-person fabric stores to make their own clothes or buy well-made clothes. So many companies took advantage of this and started pumping out cheaply made clothes because they know people will buy it. They know people will buy cheap clothes because they don't have the money to spend on amazing, well-made clothes that are good for them and good for the environment. Now, this may sound bad and it may seem hopeless that we can't beat these giant companies that have millions of dollars, but there is a way to fix this problem, like shopping secondhand at thrift stores or secondhand sites. A lot of times at these stores or on these sites, you can get well-made garments from in the past for a lot cheaper, like a well-made shirt from the 80s for like $5. Even if you're buying fast fashion clothes from a secondhand shop, like Shein, because it's unavoidable at this point at thrift stores, it's still good for the environment because you're taking it out of landfills and you're putting it to good use. And if you don't want to buy secondhand, you can support sustainable brands that are eco-friendly. You can even take up sewing as a hobby and try to make your own clothes. Don't let our clothes end up in landfills anymore. And don't settle for cheap plastic clothing. You deserve better.